Okay, Amber, we are all ready to go, so you can start on time.
That's great. Thanks so much. I'll give it a few more minutes and then we'll get going. Hi, Tim and Reed. It's Amber. We're going to wait a few more minutes till we get going. Okay, good. I see your video. So I did promote you to panelist. That's what I was hoping. Give us just a few more minutes so we can get critical mass and we'll get started.
Sounds good. Can you hear me all right? Just as a test real quick.
Yeah. Yep. And yes, I can. And then we are, just so you know, we're broadcasting to YouTube now. So they're public meetings and so people can rewatch them. I'll turn on my video so you don't don't feel so alone there. Okay. And I think some of our energy and climate team people are watching this today, which is great. And I think we'll probably see you in that committee as well. We got a couple more minutes to get city council, and thanks again for being here and making this time work. It sounds like you've been on a lot of meetings today. Okay, so it is 1:20. I think people will kind of be filtering in here. I am going to call I think we're the Climate, Parks and Conservation Committee officially now to order for February 9th. We continue to meet virtually. We are all really hoping that this can stop soon, but we're not quite there. So you can join the meeting by your computer or phone at www.ci.missoula.mt.us/webcasts. You can also leave a voicemail for all of City Council on any issues at 406-552-6012, or email all of council at ci.missoula.mt.us. So let's see if we have anyone. And I apologize, I am working from one screen here and it gets a little bit clunky. Okay, so let's see. Karina, you want to go ahead and do roll?
No problem. Anderson,
Present.
Becerra. Mirta, I see Mirta's here, but I don't hear her.
I'm here.
There she is. Okay. Carlino,
Here.
He's present. He's waving.
okay. Contos,
Here.
Hess,
Here.
Jones,
Here.
Jordan. I don't see Kristen. Nugent,
Here.
Savage,
Here.
Cheryl,
Present.
Baseka,
Present.
West.
I think West is going to be gone this afternoon.
Okay. All right, and looks like we do have a quorum.
Okay, that sounds great. And we will just keep an eye out for Kristen Jordan. I don't know for sure if she'll be joining us or not. We do have minutes from our January 26th meeting to approve. If there are no changes to those minutes, we will let them stand approved. Okay, I don't see any hands up, so those will be approved. And if, I think we just have Chris Rowe in the public, but Chris, if you have anything to say on non-agenda items, please raise your hand. Chris is not raising his hand. I think he's here to watch this presentation. So today I'm really excited for all of us to hear this, and I'm thankful to read, and I think Tim's here with us too. Again, I have one screen, so that's a bit of a problem. But anyway, I had heard this presentation or some version of this presentation given to the heads of the departments in the city, and I thought it was really interesting and would be a good time to have the council, especially with new members, updated on what McKinstry is doing for the city and kind of an update on that energy performance contract. So I'm just gonna be quiet and let Reed or Tim take over from here. But I do have a question. Would you prefer that we save questions for the end of your presentation, or do you want us to ask them along the way?
I'm gonna ask, how long do we have?
I don't know how long we have. Hold on. I think I gave us 30 minutes for.
My answer depends on that.
Okay, we have 30 minutes for presentation and questions.
Okay, I prefer to do questions during, but given that amount of time, let's save them till the end, and then we'll have a slide and go over questions then.
That sounds
work?
great. So that sounds
Okay.
great. Everyone, so write your questions down and we'll come back to them. Thanks. Go ahead and take over.
All righty, I'm gonna share my screen here real quick. Please give me a confirmation that you can see it too.
Not yet.
Nothing yet, huh? Try again.
Looks like it's coming through. Yeah, there it is. We've got it.
All right. Perfect.
So can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so let me kick this off. My name is Tim Tolman. I'm the business development manager for McKinstry. Native Montana, been here 70 years, grew up in the Missoula area, and started McKinstry in the state about 13 years ago. And so we'll get in a little bit about what McKinstry is, but Reed, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, native Missoulian, went to school in Bozeman. I've been back in Missoula for 6 years now. Work with McKinstry doing energy analysis, commissioning engineering, and then now I manage our project development kind of front end. Yeah, glad to be here.
So we start every meeting, and it's going to be no different. We start every meeting with a safety moment because Safety is a culture at McKinstry, and especially with the type of projects we do, safety is second to nothing. So we start every project with a safety plan overall. We do our daily work every time we start a project. Every day we have a safety plan, and we also do individual safety tasks on things such as crane picks or live working with live electricity or things like that. And we do this to ensure that everybody on or near the job is safe. And in a project like we're going to discuss with you, there are a lot of things that could happen. So read next slide, please. So today we're going to do quickly, and I'm going to get out of the middle of this and let Reed do the talking because he's the smart one of the two of us. We're going to give you a little bit of an overview on what energy services performance contracting is for those of you that don't know. We're going to follow that up with a background of what we've done and where we're at this point, which is at what we call pre-final results. We're going to go over that a little bit with you, and then we're going to go on to what's next. And we're going to do this in a concise manner because all of this in 30 minutes is going to be a stretch. So Reed, it's yours.
All righty. Thanks for the intro there, Tim. This first slide really just kind of setting the table for why we're talking about these things. People focus a lot on cost and when they're building a building. Really what this is showing is that 50% of your costs are going to be in operations and energy in a facility over time, not just first cost, which you actually see is that 11% amount. So we're going to be talking about how do we capture some of that and make it work for us instead of against us. And so this is why ESPC, or Energy Services Performance Contracting, exists. There's a lot of words there. That's directly from Department of Environmental Quality, which is the agency that manages EPC in Montana. But if you look at the graphic at the bottom, this kind of focuses on that same concept, from that last slide, is that we've got existing operating costs. We want to see what part of those can be savings. So on the right, the green there, what is the cost savings? And then identify projects that can capture those. So the middle of that graphic shows that, hey, you're going to pay for those a lot of times through financing. But once the term of financing is done, you're going to get all those cost savings going back. So because of the nature of this process and the fact that you're doing an engineering study up front, you're then building these projects to realize the savings, and then you're going to, measure and verify those savings. ESPC is turnkey. And that's really important because we need to have a single point of accountability to make sure that all of these things are working in conjunction and actually getting the outcomes that you're aiming for. And so where we're at today is the green arrow. So we've done an IGA, or an investment grade audit, which is the consulting, planning, preliminary engineering, and project pricing. And that's what we're, presenting a slice of results for you today. The next step is going to be actually implementing those. So taking what that actually means as a project, and then measuring and verifying the savings that come out of that project, and then helping you constantly improve your buildings, training on those new systems, and then communicating the success of those projects. So because of this single point of accountability, we want to flash up kind of a structure of what this looks like, contractually and from like a management team. So on the right side, you're seeing a traditional construction arrangement here, where an owner, being the city in this instance, would have multiple parts of the team: an architect, an engineer, and then a contractor that gets the bid. At that point, you might have a financing partner and even an owner's rep, right, that provides the money and then helps manage a large project. Because of this turnkey aspect, you're essentially hiring McKinstry to fill almost all of these roles for you. And we'll do all of the investigation, engineering, construction planning, actual construction implementation, and then close out. And so you'll see we'll directly manage that subcontractor and design team for you. So shifting gears a little bit to specifically your project, These are some background, just some facts. We kicked off a little over a year ago, last January. The scope is to look at 9 buildings, 3 parking garages, outdoor field lighting, and 28 city parks. And so that includes baseline efficiency, lighting, water conservation, and even some electrification initiatives. So the midpoint of this process, which we debriefed with all the different departments, is what we call rough order of magnitude, or ROM. So that's kind of the first filtering out. We did that in July of 2021 to make sure we were on the right track, identifying projects, and we're developing things that the city was actually interested in implementation. As far as projects, we call them FIMs, facility improvement measures. The other term you'll see kicked around is ECMs, or energy conservation measures. So in all the buildings and facilities we looked at, there were over 150 ideas. 120 of those have been analyzed and taken to this stage. And just as an FYI, the team effort on this has been over 3,000 hours to date. And that doesn't include your time, as in all the department managers, all the building managers, your sustainability coordinator has been instrumental, and all of you guys. So there's lots of hours too outside of just those McKinstry hours. Just a couple more investigation stats here. So lighting, which is really a good energy conservation and cost savings driver. So we looked at 3 parking structures, almost 500,000 square feet of buildings, and the outdoor field lighting at those public McCormick ball fields. Building efficiency applied to 9 buildings, and 1 parking structure actually has some office space in it. Rooftop solar was assessed at 7 sites. There's a potential for almost 510 kilowatts of solar. Electrification initiatives were explored at all the buildings and the parking garage offices. And then Parks Irrigation investigated 28 city parks. None of those have made it to the pre-final stage, but they're still on the table for further analysis. So this is a little bit of a review of what I've talked about. I'll go through this one quickly. Essentially, what's been complete is baselining. So looking at all the existing information, being that utility data, existing plans and specs, and then doing on-site interviews with building managers, as well as documenting actual conditions and equipment information in those buildings and facilities. And so then we take those and it goes through the ideation phase. What are the potential projects? Those get filtered out. The ones that make it then get designed. Those designs then get quantified energy savings if they were to be implemented. And then also they get quantified costs for implementation. And so that's kind of where we're at in the process, is that we've pulled all that together. And we're now at this point where there's lots of options, almost like a shopping list, and that needs to be narrowed down for an actual project for implementation. So those last 3 upcoming items are a report of everything we've done, that scoping exercise to identify a construction project, and then actually getting through the contracting and implementation stage. Boots on the ground, shovels in the dirt. So we've kicked around the word pre-final. And what this means is report level pricing and savings for decision making. And the reason we distinguish there is when we actually go to construction contract, we will give you guaranteed pricing for implementation and guaranteed savings so that you have that ROI you can actually make an investment decision on. Right now, we've just got that decision-making information. So we're gonna quickly add and remove projects and look at how that affects the financials for each facility and for each department. That's the goal with this. And today we're gonna use some example projects of scopes, not necessarily saying this is the project you would want to do, but it's a project you could do at these different departments. Just to illustrate the point and the kind of information we have. So just an overall roll up, all city departments, cost of all potential measures identified is almost 24 million. And so I've got the don't panic asterisk there. And the reason is because there's lots of overlapping scope here. And what I mean by that is you wouldn't replace an old boiler at an existing fire station and also convert to an electric heat pump boiler at that station. That would be completely redundant, right? You would have two systems now. So there's lots of additional scope that makes that number look big. So as an example of rolling this up, example project one is about $3 million, 160,000 in savings per year. O&M savings is also an annual figure. So that's operation and maintenance. That's 63,000 per year. And so this is a payback of 17.6 years. That's calculated by taking the cost and then 5 years of operations and maintenance savings, and then that annual energy savings. And that gets us to 17.6 years. Because that's under 20 years, which is the term that is limited by Montana statute, there's zero down payment for that. You, of course, could add the cash up front if you wanted to, but you don't need to because that project would self-fund itself before 20 years. I'll point out at the bottom here, we've got some metrics just to consider for emissions and climate action. So we've got metric tons of CO2 equivalent offset. It's 555 for that project. And the acres of trees would be 455 if you want a more tangible metric there.
Hey, Reed, it's Tim. Would you do me a favor and
Yeah.
briefly describe O&M savings in a little more detail?
Absolutely. So lighting's a really easy one to pick on here. We've all seen light bulbs burn out, right? So there's a cost associated with buying that new material. If it's a fixture needs completely replaced, you would potentially hire an electrician because then you're getting into the wiring of the building. So there's costs associated with things wearing out. That's the maintenance piece of it. If you put all new lights in, they're not going to burn out for minimum 5 years because they're warranted, and frankly, maybe longer, maybe 10. So we can take that savings and apply that towards the payback. Another one that is a little more hidden behind the scenes would be like a cleaning cost, right? So if we reduce the cost that you're expending on cleaning supplies, that would be an operations savings that then is occurring annually as well.
Yeah, this is Tim. I'm going to go a little further and say that we look and we get those savings by going into your budget and looking at what you've been paying for light bulbs, for things like that. And we know that you're not going to do that for the next 5 years. It's just not a number that we come up with. It's a number that's calculated.
All right, so jumping into project 2 real quick. Again, this is just an example to kind of show you how these financials can shake out. Say there's a $6.2 million project, and this is based on actual projects being selected and curated into this scenario. That would then have a $200,000 annual energy savings component, a $72,000 O&M component, and then that makes for a 30-year payback. So that's beyond that 20-year term that I was referencing earlier. So what does it take to get to that? It takes a $1.9 million down payment, or capital infusion would be the other way to put that. That sounds like a lot, right? But if we think about that in terms of like a leverage ratio, you're essentially putting in only 1/3 of the project cost. So you're putting in $2 million to get $6 million worth of work done, and the savings is paying for the remainder of that. So at first, 30 years might not sound like a great payback, but when you think in terms of how far your dollar is stretching, it paints a different picture. And so emissions targets for this one, 751 metric tons of CO2 and 616 acres of trees.
It's Tim again. I'm going to mention something again because some of you are brand new to this. Let's say you went for project number 2. The $6.2 million is a guaranteed cost. So just for the sake of it, we goof up, McKinstry does, and it comes in at $6.5 million. And that's not your issue. That's our issue. You don't have to come up with a 6.5. There are no change orders. There's nothing like that. We have to eat that 300,000. The same thing goes towards savings. We're saying that we will guarantee that 197,720. If for some reason the savings come in at 170,000, we have to either implement more things to get you more savings at our cost, or we have to write the city a $27,000 check annually. And so that's what performance contracting is the guarantee of the project cost and the project savings. I just thought I'd reiterate that again.
Thanks for that, Tim. So we're going to pick on aquatics today as kind of an example, and we put together one of these slides for each department. We're going to go through two just to show you a little bit more tangibly what that means. So cost of all potential measures identified was almost 8 million for aquatics. So example project one would be a $1.4 million project, $90,000 in savings, 35,000 in operations and maintenance for a 14.2 year payback. So that is a self-funding project. You're going to see on a lot of these projects, there's kind of a base, right? A foundation to make these projects work. And this is sometimes referred to as the low-hanging fruit. And that's going to be lighting, envelope, and water conservation. So those three generally have really, really good paybacks, and they can help support other parts. Aquatics has some other good payback projects, which is chlorine and chemical savings, and that as well as boiler and pumping improvements, because they heat those pools constantly. So the benefits derived from this are energy and cost savings, reduced O&M, and reduced water use, both domestic and pool. If we then take project one and build on it and say we want to include maybe some more things, and so the theme here is we've stretched the project to include solar photovoltaic array on top of currents, as well as kind of a deferred maintenance item, which is this pool filtration system that needs replacement. And this is at both splash and currents. So that makes the total project of about 2.8 million, 108,000 in annual savings, 41,000 in O&M, for a 23.7 year payback. So this is just beyond that 20-year range. And so this only requires a down payment of 390,000. So going down to the benefit at the bottom of the page, we get that solar photovoltaic array to offset the electrical, but we also are reducing the price of those filters essentially by 70%, right? Because we're leveraging those energy savings to pay for them, make up the difference. Moving on to parking as our second example. So cost of all measures was 590,000. The project one is going to be 390,000, 18,000 a year in savings. This makes for about a 19-year payback. This is again that trifecta of lighting, envelope, and water. And then this works in water leak remediation, which has been an ongoing operations challenge for this group, and then better heat controls. And so the benefits are energy and cost savings, fixing that ongoing issue, and then increased constituent and staff safety. So this is a big one. Parking garages are kind of dark by nature, especially when they have older and burnt out lights. And so by replacing those with new LED lights that put out not more light, but also better light, is going to be much more safer for everybody in those environments, city staff as well as public. Project two builds on project one again. And so this one kind of showcases how we can get some electrification taken care of. This replaces the furnaces in the offices with heat pumps rather than gas-fired furnaces. And you can see it's not a great payback. It costs a little money to do that. But again, we're looking at that leverage ratio. We're getting an almost $600,000 project accomplished, putting in $235,000. So it eliminates 100% of natural gas use at the Central Park garage, and it reduces the capital expenditures by 60% in the process. So there's a lot of numbers on this, and we won't go through each one, but this is just to show how we're presenting these roll-ups by department. You know, the aquatics and the parking lines on this are going to match up to the slides we just went over exactly. You know, the two columns I will point out that weren't on the last couple slides are the percent electricity saved and the percent of gas saved. And so we're quantifying those each by department and by building, so that really these can be evaluated not just on their financials, but how much we're reducing consumption in each building. So next actions. Tim, did you want to take this one or you want me to take it?
You know, you're doing so well. I'm enjoying just listening to you.
All right. So we
And
talked.
hey, Reed, I just wanted
Yes.
to let you know, we're gonna, Jordan said I could have a few minutes from his committee since I
Mhm.
clearly did not plan enough time for this, which I apologize for. But I definitely want to leave some time for questions because I imagine unless people are so confused that they don't have questions, that there are going to be quite a few questions. So just
Sure.
kind of giving you a timeline.
We are on the last slide, so we'll be sure to get through this one quick and then we'll move to questions. So next actions, define implementation criteria. And this is an important one, right? Because this is what decides what project you're going to build. And so I've listed some samples there, but that doesn't mean those are the only criteria that you should use, right? Overall project spend by department, percent savings goals, simple payback, how much greenhouse gas is offset in total in aggregate or by facility. So think about those things. The next one is going to be facilitated individual department scoping exercises. And that's a mouthful for saying, going through that shopping list and saying, what do we actually want to do? What has the most impact? What accomplishes our goals? And then putting that forward into a construction plan. Identifying funding and financing sources. How is the city going to pay for it? Is there cash involved? Is it all borrowed money? Is it a bond? You know, Tim, did you want to mention energy as a service here?
Yeah, I will just quickly. There is also an option that we had discussed a little earlier where the city does not need to come up with any capital, but you pay for this as you would a service contract. And so we're over a period of, let's say, 20 years, you just look at this and you say, oh, I want to do a $4 million project. So without financing, well, that's $200,000 a year. And so you pay as a service contract, $200,000 a year. And it does a couple of unique things. Because it's a service contract, it keeps it off your books. It doesn't affect your credit, doesn't go on that side. And so it's not looked at as debt. And so there are options like that when we get to that point, that we will speak to the council and to Dale, and you guys can decide what way you want to go with regard to financing.
This is also on here is to continue to communicate and update you guys on how the process is going, and then ultimately the approval process for the project. And once we've arrived at a project for implementation, McKinstry will give that guaranteed maximum price that Tim was referring to earlier, an actual proposal for construction, and we'll go to contract for that. And so the arrow just shows that really that is the outcome, specifically of that narrowing of the list to produce a project. So as promised, that's the last one. We're on to discussions and questions. And of course, thank you for your time.
You bet. I'm going to add one thing and then I'll let you guys barrage us. We gave you examples, but there are so many things at each department that we did not show you today. I mean, as Reed said, it's a shopping list. We can go to fire, for example, and show them the 20 measures that we have identified. They can then look at those measures, select and deselect, and have the cash flow and savings immediately update so they can tailor a project to meet their financials. So there's just a lot more than what we thought we could show you guys today. So now we'll be quiet and you guys can ask us questions.
Great, thank you. And I apologize, I should have recognized that this would be more time. I'm gonna go to council for questions and just kind of understanding that this is complicated. And if you're seeing it for the first time, it's probably feeling very complicated. You know, the city, we hired McKinstry to do this review of all of our city operations. I think it's a fascinating way to look at reducing carbon emissions and balancing that with savings. So I love that. I love the concept. I don't understand all of it for sure. But just for, you know, the council people and the public, you know, the project 1 and project 2, as they laid it out. And as Tim said, they're just giving us a few, you know, examples, but, you know, in project 1, we would be able to pay it back within the 20 years. And project 2, we can basically get a better project done, get other stuff we need to get done at a reduced rate. So, I mean, it's going to be balanced. If I'm saying anything wrong, tell me. I'm just kind of doing kind of the really high level of what I'm beginning to understand about how this all works. So also, will you take your slide down, Reed? Just so
Yeah.
people. So anyway, that's kind of the high level, but this is, I mean, it's an energy performance review and then contract of what our city is doing and our goal to reduce our carbon emissions and get all the other things done we need to get done in the city. So that's my high level for dummies version of what we're doing. So does anyone have any questions? I don't see any hands up yet, and I can't imagine that there aren't any questions around this. Okay, we have an attendee, Chris Rowe, who is the head of our energy and climate team that would like to ask a question. You should be able to unmute yourself, Chris. Chris, are you there? Maybe I can. Oh, there he is. Chris, do you have a question? You're on mute if you're talking. Sorry, Chris, we can't hear you. Okay, I'm gonna go to, let's see, who has a question here. Chris, I'm gonna come back to you. I'm gonna try to promote you to panelist so you can talk. Daniel, go ahead while I'm doing that.
Yeah, I was just curious if we could have a copy of the presentation just to look, or anything else relevant to look a little bit more into it. I didn't see anything on the agenda attached. Or if you could just email it to us. Thanks.
Yeah, be glad to.
Absolutely.
We can attach it to today's agenda as well. If you want to send it to me, we can go ahead and attach that. I was going to say that, so thanks for bringing that up, Daniel. Also, for the record, Karina, would you let the record reflect that Kristen Jordan is in attendance? I meant to do that earlier. I think Chris is actually, I promoted him to panelist because I couldn't figure out how to let him talk otherwise. Chris, do you have a question? Chris Rowe? Chris, are you there? I think I can hear you, Chris. Yep, I'm not getting you, Chris. I'm sorry. Luckily, you will see Chris again because he is on the energy and climate team. So unless he gets in here, are there any other questions from City Council? I can't imagine that we don't have too many. But I think we all probably need to review this presentation too, and maybe dig into it a little more. Jordan, go ahead.
Thanks, and I appreciate the presentation. I wonder if Reed, if you could, or Tim, if you could speak to next steps and timelines as far as city decision-making processes. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a little bit of work left to do as far as finishing up that investment grade audit portion. So some of the electrification measures at the buildings that we're investigating are taking just a little more time to do the energy analysis for. So there's probably a couple more weeks of analysis there. After that, and we've actually already started scheduling those department level meetings. And so my understanding, Dale Bickle's been very involved in these. And so he's going to be involved in these department level meetings where we'll kind of work out what the projects could look like. And 2 are set up for next week, and we have yet to schedule the remaining departments. So that will take several weeks to work through that process. From there, I think that would get rolled up collectively and probably communicated back to this group as, you know, the intention for what is going to get implemented. And then I'm hoping in the background, what we can do is work in parallel to get the actual construction contract set up. Because this is a 2-phase process, we have a master agreement contract for professional services, essentially the audit that we performed. Actual implementation will be done through a separate contract. So we'll be wanting to get that set up in the background too, so that once the city decides to move forward with a project, that's not a delay in getting that figured out and negotiated.
Okay, great. And I have a few, I guess, questions on mechanics internally, but I think in the interest of time, I'll probably just save those. But I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. And one other quick question, and then I think I'll let you go. I think we probably all need a little time to kind of let this sink in. But how many, you know, when you talk about going shopping in the laundry list, how many, just, do you know how many projects? I saw a little bit of that spreadsheet, so I know it's long, but can you give us a sense of how many different options there would be? How many grocery items or whatever?
Yeah, there's currently about 120 grocery items, you know, and split between 10 different facilities. So that's an average of 12 per location. Some are more, some are less. You know, Aquatics had lots of options. The parking garages have less, right? It's just the simpler buildings, simpler operations. But yeah, there's, and you wouldn't do all of those, obviously, like we talked about before. So there will be that kind of filtering process of what makes sense and what accomplishes your goals there.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm sorry, we're kind of rushed you through that, a little too tight on time, but I think that we'll be really interested to track how this is going and have you come back to City Council and give an updated presentation. And if you want to go ahead and send that to me, I'll make sure it gets attached to the agenda and get to all the council people so they can review and mull it over. But this is really interesting work, and I think is going to be a great step forward with our climate goals. And I'm just excited to see as you meet with the departments and as we finalize some of these things, what comes forward and what rises to the top. So thank you both so much for coming on. It's kind of short notice, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. And we are going to be adjourned. And Jordan, thank you for the extra time. Bye, everyone.